Today on The Inner Voice, we present Imagination Creates Reality, Neville Goddard. Book available in both printed and electronic format. Link in the description. Your own wonderful human imagination is the true creative power of God within you. It is your savior. If you were thirsty, water would be your savior. If you needed a job, employment would be your savior. Your imagination is the power to save you from whatever circumstance you find yourself in. You can experience your heart's desire through the use of your imagination. Nothing is impossible for your imagination. Your imagination is unlimited in what it can accomplish. If you can imagine something, you can achieve it. Let me give you an example. If you could not walk and were confined to a wheelchair, you could close your eyes and imagine yourself running along the beach or wading in the water. If you imagined yourself doing this until it became real, you could achieve a healing that would allow you to actually walk or run. The way to use your imagination creatively is as follows. Relax in a chair or on a bed and close your eyes. First, determine what it is you wish to experience. Then, in this state of total relaxation, bring to your mind the end result of what you desire. For example, if you want to be promoted at work, the end result could be people congratulating you on your promotion. You could move to a bigger office. You would enjoy a pay raise. Take any of these events, and with your eyes closed, actually listen to your friends congratulate you on your promotion. Feel their hand in yours as they tell you how happy they are for you. As you really feel them congratulating you, your imagination will go to work to bring about that state in your outer world. You need not worry about how this will be accomplished. Your imagination will use whatever natural means necessary to accomplish it. I am the beginning and the end. My ways are undecipherable. What you do with your imagination is an instant creative act. However, in this three-dimensional world, events appear in a temporal sequence. Therefore, it may take you a short interval of time to realize in the outside world what you have just experienced in the imagination. After you have performed this act in your imagination, open your eyes and go about your normal, natural business, trusting that what you have done must bear fruit in your world. Make your inner conversations conform to your imaginary act. You have planted a seed and soon you will see the harvest of what you have sown. When you go into your imagination, make sure you are actually performing the action, hearing the words, touching the object or smelling the aroma in your self-conceived drama. What you do in your imagination is not a mere daydream in which you see events in your mind's eye. You must enter the dream as if you were really there. You must do then now and do there here. To make this perfectly clear, imagine that you had the experience of driving a new car after you had achieved your goal. In that case, you would not merely see a new car in your mind. You must actually enter into the dream, sit behind the wheel, smell the newness of the interior, feel yourself enjoying a comfortable ride, feel the happiness that will come over you as you fulfill your dream. What you experience in imagination is a real creative act. It is a fact in the fourth dimension of space and will make its appearance in this three-dimensional world as surely as planting a seed will result in the growth of a particular plant. Once you have planted this seed in your imagination, do not uproot it by worrying about how it will take place. Each seed has its own timing. Some take a few days, some take a little longer. Trust that what you have planted will appear in your world. Your imagination will bring out everything it needs to turn your dream into reality. If it is necessary for other people to play a role to achieve your end, your imagination will draw that person into your drama to play their part in the sequence of events. Your only responsibility is to remain true to your imaginary act until you experience it in your outer world. You can repeat your imaginary act every night before you go to sleep. In fact, you may want to act out this drama over and over again until it seems normal and natural to you as you fall asleep. Your imagination will put the means to perform your dream while your conscious mind sleeps. Bring your five senses into play as you perform your imaginary activity. Actually hear a friend's voice congratulating you or feel yourself hugging that person. If you wanted a new piano, run your hand across the smooth wood, touch the keys, and listen to the sound. If you would like to receive a dozen roses, really smell their fragrance and touch their velvety petals. Finally, you must be persistent in achieving your desire. Keep imagining what you desire until you have actually obtained it. Do nothing else to obtain your desire. If it is necessary to take some action, you will be led to do it normally and naturally. You don't have to do anything to help you get it. Remember that it is God Himself who is doing the work, and He knows exactly how to accomplish it. If you think about your desire during the day, give thanks that it is already an accomplished fact, because it is. Dream better than the best you know. A cause. Nothing is impossible. There are two ways to interpret this statement, both correct. The obvious meaning is that it is possible to achieve anything you desire. It can also be interpreted to mean that it is impossible for nothing to exist. Everything we are aware of or perceive in some way is something. It is inconceivable that anything can come from nothing, or that anything can become nothing. It is a fact that nature abhors a vacuum and always rushes to fill it with something. Some force or power created all that is. According to the Bible, creation is finished. Not only is it finished, but God said it was good. Have you ever thought about what God could have used to create everything that exists? If creation is finished, how is it possible to beg God to create something in your life that did not exist yesterday or today? Is it hard to believe that God said His creation was good? If all of creation is good, why do people experience problems, and how can wars, crimes, famine, and other undesirable conditions exist? The answers to these questions are found on the following pages. Understanding these answers will enable you to see that it is impossible for nothing to exist. You will also see that you can obtain anything you desire because nothing is impossible for the creative power that resides within you. You can be, and you can have anything you desire to be and to have. There is no limit to what you can achieve for yourself and others. It does not matter what your present circumstances are. The principle that you have unconsciously used to bring about the undesirable conditions in your life can be consciously applied to make all your dreams come true. Creation is finished and it is good. God created the earth and everything on it, and God said it was good. Man has wondered about these statements for centuries. If man really understood their meanings, he would not be confused or anxious about his past, present or future. Understanding these two statements would enable man to realize that he alone controls his actions and the circumstances of his life. Let us take the first statement. God created the earth and everything on it. God is infinite. Therefore, God must have been before any form came into existence. What substance could He have used to create all that exists? There can be only one answer. God created all that exists from the only substance available, Himself. God, thought consciousness, uttered the word and created everything from Himself. Everything you perceive is made of the one substance, God. The only substance behind everything is energy, and that energy is God or the Word. Although scientists and doctors can analyze the various chemicals from which the body is made, none can combine these chemicals to form a living person. Since God created all that is from Himself, it follows that God is the Creator and the creation. God expresses life through each of us. It could not be otherwise. Take the second statement. God said that His creation was good. That statement has confused man, who believes that if God is good, another power must have created what is not good. However, man also recognizes that God is infinite, omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient. These qualities of God must include all forms, all events, and all situations. If it were possible to eliminate from the world all that is discordant or inharmonious, it would not be possible to experience the reverse of that condition. Perhaps this statement can be more easily understood by thinking of the principle of mathematics. By adding 5 and 6, it is possible to get the wrong answer of 12. To eliminate that possibility, one would have to eliminate the number 12 from the set of numbers. Therefore, it would be impossible to add 6 and 6 and get the correct answer of 12. It can be seen that by eliminating the possibility of a possible incorrect answer, all the numbers would end up being eliminated, and the mathematics would not be possible. However, just as mathematics exists and can be used by anyone who has acquired an understanding of how to use the principle to obtain correct answers, so the principle of creation can be understood to obtain the desired results. Since God has given us all free will, you can choose the states you wish to occupy. God does not predetermine your destiny or punish you for your mistakes or misdeeds. Because a man may not understand the law of mathematics, he may be adversely affected when he makes a mistake in subtracting an amount in his check register. The law of mathematics is not punishing him. The law simply is and can be used correctly or incorrectly. God has allowed you complete freedom to choose what you will encounter. When you come to the realization that you are God in form and expression, you will seek to experience greater good and nobler purposes for yourself and others. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word is thought or imagination. God imagined the world, and it became what He conceived. This is the principle upon which all creation rests. Since God became man to give life to man, man must contain that same creative principle within him. The kingdom of heaven is within you. We have created our personal world through thought. If you are experiencing lack, limitation, disease, disharmony, or any other unwanted condition, you have consciously or unconsciously brought these conditions into your experience. Most people do not realize that thought, belief, and imagination have created their individual worlds. There is no other cause for the conditions of your life. You can choose not to believe this, but whether you believe it or not, everything you contemplate in the outer world was conceived within your own consciousness before you experienced it. What you think with feeling, what you believe to be true, and what you imagine yourself to be or to have is the cause of everything in your personal world. You may believe there is some other cause. You may blame others for your problems. You may believe that events were forged by fate or chance, but if you are objective and observe your own beliefs and thought patterns, you will see that your world faithfully reflects everything you believe to be true of yourself and others. There is nothing and no one to change except the ideas from which you think. We think from ideas that we consent to as true and imagine situations that match our beliefs. Consciousness is the only reality. It is the creative principle that brings to your experience the exact duplicate or reflection of what you imagine to be true. The world we live in reflects everything we believe and imagine to be true, whether good, bad, or indifferent. The sooner man divests himself of the belief in a second cause, the sooner he will realize that nothing happens to him except what originates in his own consciousness. I do not deny that man believes that if he contracts a certain germ or virus, he will manifest a certain ailment or disease. If he contemplates the cause, he may come to the conclusion that it is because he came in contact with another person who had the bug. He does not realize that, in a way, his own feelings about health or illness attracted the ailment he has. If viruses or germs were really the cause of disease, everyone who came in contact with a particular virus would be affected. The outside world merely reflects what man is in his own consciousness. It does not matter what you have been taught. You can change your beliefs and thus change the circumstances of your life. The Bible says that when you pray, believe that you have received and you shall have it. Most of us have read or heard this statement at one time or another. Few people have actually prayed that way. Have you ever been sick and prayed for health? If you needed money, did you believe when you prayed that you already had the sum you asked for? Most people pray to God to change something in their lives or to give them something they don't have. If their prayers are not answered, they think that God has a reason for denying them that particular thing. They think that maybe God did not grant their request because He did not want them to achieve their desire for some reason that only God knows. Man sometimes thinks that God does not answer prayers because man is not worthy of what he seeks. Man must learn to believe in that which, for the moment, he does not see in order to be granted what he wishes to have. Man's prayers are always heard, for he always receives what he believes in. The law governing prayer is impersonal. Belief is the necessary condition for the realization of desire. No amount of supplications or rituals will bring the fulfillment of your desires if it is not the belief that you are or have that which you desire. Faith is the certainty of what is hoped for, the conviction of what is not seen. The full meaning of this statement must be understood. If the meaning were understood, man would have no problem in achieving his goals. Most men believe that nothing is impossible for God, that God could do anything if he chose to do it. So man believes that he has faith in God and prays to God for what he wants. If his prayer is not granted, he thinks that either he has not prayed enough or long enough, or that God has decided not to grant him what he asked for. However, faith is the real substance of what you hope for. It is the evidence of what you desire that you do not see in the outside world. What you want to do or be has already been created. Therefore, it really exists. It is possible to bring into your world anything in creation by your belief that you already have it. Faith that what you want is already a fact is the means by which you activate the invisible state. That state is then reflected in your outer world. Creation is finished. God cannot create anything that does not already exist. Faith, or the belief that you already are or have what you desire, is the only means by which you experience your desires. No limitation is imposed on what you can have, except your inability to assume possession of the quality or thing desired. How the law works. The law of identical harvest or cause and effect is impersonal and can be used to bring into your experience anything you can conceive of. Since creation is complete, all possible states already exist. You're merging with a particular state, imagining with feeling what you would experience if you were in that state, causes that state to be projected onto your screen of space. This law cannot be changed or broken and always reproduces in your outer world the exact duplicate of whatever belief you consent to as true. If you want to change your world, you must change your beliefs. Since consciousness is the only cause, you cannot blame others for the conditions that currently exist, nor can fate or chance be the cause of what you are experiencing now. Nothing can alter the course of events in your life except a change in your own consciousness. Whatever is appearing in your world now, though it may seem real and an unalterable fact, is a reflection of previous activity in your own consciousness. Therefore, a change in consciousness will reflect that change in the future as surely as past beliefs reflect the present. Man is pure formless consciousness, and what he conceives himself to be is an illusion or reflection of the particular ideas he holds to be true. These illusions exist only as long as man focuses his attention upon them and gives them life. The conscious mind forms beliefs and opinions from the evidence of the senses or the perceived external world. The creative power within each of us accepts as true what the conscious mind impresses upon it. Your creative power takes those ideas, which are thought with feeling, and projects them into your outer world. It is important to remember that not all thoughts are creative. Only those that are believed to be true or that are attached to a feeling create the circumstances and events that you will encounter. Therefore, emotions such as anger, fear, love, or joy are creative. You must guard the emotions you allow into your consciousness in the same way you would discriminate against allowing a stranger into your home. You cannot allow negative emotions to fill your mind without suffering the consequences of experiencing the state with which those emotions are attached. Fear of loss brings loss into your world. You could take every external precaution to protect yourself from loss, but if you fear loss, you will most certainly experience it in your affairs. Feelings of love and joy create happy events and loving relationships. Feeling abundant brings wealth into your life. A person who is unloving or distrustful and feels that others take advantage of them attracts to themselves what they believe in. No matter what he does outwardly, his relationships with others will reflect what he accepts as true. She may want a loving relationship, but she can only attract to herself what she is aware of. Literally, like attracts like. As it is within, so it is without. Consciousness is reality, and what our senses perceive and seem so real is but the shadow of what we believe ourselves and the world to be. Conscious use of the law. At this point, I am going to talk about who I am and what I am doing. If that sounds self-centered, it is. 66 books have been written about who I am. I'm going to quote a few sentences from some of those books. You may have heard many of these quotes, but you may not have realized that they speak to the being that I am. The first quote is taken from the book of Exodus. In it, Moses is talking to God and says, "When I return to the people, who shall I tell them that sent me?" The voice replies, "Tell them that it is I who have sent me to you." That is my name forever, and by which I will be known to all generations. The 10 Commandments say, "You shall not use the name of the Lord your God in vain." Thou shalt not is a commandment. Thou shalt not means you are not to do it. It means that under no circumstances should you do it. That name is I am. Now, first of all, we have all forgotten his name. We say I am hundreds of times a day and we don't know that we are using God's name. Second, we try to break the commandment all day long. We do not pay attention to what we say following I am. When we say I am and follow it with something we would not like in our world, we are using the name of the Lord, but not in vain. The Bible declares that we cannot use the name in vain. Nothing we say preceded by I am is in vain. That is his name. It is God himself, and because it is God, it is creative. God gave us himself. He is I am, and that is what I am. I can never forget that I am. I can forget who I am or where I am, but I can never forget that I exist. Every time I say I am creating something. To pray is to believe that we have already received what we ask for. When I say I am attaching my consciousness of being to something. Now, you can lie and not believe what you are saying, but you cannot believe something about I am and not create it. We are creating morning, noon, and night by our I am statements. If you say, I don't feel well, and you believe it, you are perpetuating disease in your life. You must change those affirmations to I feel great. We were taught, let the weak say, I am strong. But you can't parrot that. We have to pray, say I am, believing it to be true, and then we will receive. First, we must be like the watchman at the gate. We must watch every thought that contains I am. If you are observant, you will see that you have created every circumstance and experience in your life. Another important word to watch for is if. The conscious mind is very subtle in expressing doubt, Satan or the devil. We can keep our mind focused on what we want by using positive I statements. If we are not careful, we can let a little if slip in without recognizing its implication. We might say, I feel wonderful, but then say, however, if the pain continues, I will go to the doctor on Tuesday. Ifs are always followed by something negative, and that is nothing more than doubt creeping in to rob us of the good seed we have sown. Eliminate the word if from your vocabulary, as it is not productive for what you would like to harvest. If puts everything in past or future tense, and I always experience what I think I am. I am is not future tense. To be well is not to be well. I must believe that I am already what I want to be. Remember, every word that comes out of my mouth shall not return to me void. Do you believe it? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. What is his name? I am. So, begin to monitor every word, I am, you say. Do you see a pattern? Don't the circumstances of your life reflect what you have been saying? You have been misusing the creative power that is God, I am. Now that you are aware of what you have been doing, watch every word and make it match what you wish to bring into your life. Eventually, you will have faith that what you are affirming, even if there is no external evidence to support it, is a fact in consciousness and will soon be projected so that you can experience it externally. Knowing that God really did become you because he is I am, you must realize that you are using your power to create every time you use that name. Free will. Creation is over, and you have free will to choose the state you will occupy. Therefore, it is important to determine the ideas from which you think. Whatever concept is accepted as true will be externalized in your outer world. The choice of what you will focus your attention on is the only free will you can exercise. Once a thought is accepted and charged with feeling, the creative power within proceeds to externalize it. Whether your assumptions are conscious or unconscious, they direct all action toward their fulfillment. It is a delusion that, apart from assuming the feeling of desire fulfillment, you can do anything to assist in its realization. Your own wonderful human imagination determines the means it will use to bring your assumptions to fruition. Each of us is subjected to a sea of ideas. We listen to the radio, watch the news on television, or listen to some gossip. If what we observe provokes an emotion in us, We have reacted and thereby planted a seed that will sprout at some point in the future. Thoughts do not stay in the past. Rather, they move into the future to confront us so that we can see what we have planted, whether wisely or unwisely. It is worthwhile to wake up in the morning and imagine yourself at the end of the day, having accomplished everything you wanted and feeling happy and content. If there is a situation you are going to encounter later in the day that worries you, spend a few moments imagining the outcome you wish to experience. These imaginary activities will now move forward into your future to reveal the harvest you so wisely sowed. Desire. Desire is a gift from God. Man does not have to do anything but accept the gift, simply giving thanks for the invisible reality before observing it in his outer world. Through desire, God invites us to raise our consciousness to higher and higher levels. During our journey through this dream of life, it is necessary to experience all possible states so that we can return as God, the Father, but enhanced by having experienced both good and evil. The desire to do more, to be more, and to have more than you currently express is the urge to expand. You may wonder if the desire to kill or hurt someone can be inspired by God. The answer is that, in reality, no man desires to kill or harm another. He may desire freedom from that apparent other, and through his limited understanding, feels that the only way he can achieve that freedom is by destroying the other. Man does not realize that the desire for freedom contains within itself the power and the means to fulfillment. Because of his lack of faith, man distorts these gifts of God. He does not realize that God, the wisdom and power within him, has ways that he, as man, is unaware of and can no longer discover. Learn to be grateful for the desires you have been given. They already exist and are ready to incarnate in your world. You are not called upon to do anything to help their realization, except to free your mind of any doubts as to how they will arrive and accept them fully as you would a gift from a loved one. Be observant. The importance of objectively observing your thoughts cannot be overemphasized. It is easy to fall into thought patterns that can get in the way of achieving our desires. It is then easy to blame others or attribute our frustrations to second causes. Being a rather impatient person, I tend to be anxious about getting home after work, and I especially dislike waiting in lines. I began to realize that no matter what time I chose to shop at the grocery store, I would encounter problems at the checkout, price checking, people writing checks and having trouble finding their ID, and other delays. These occasions terrified me, and I wanted to do something to remedy this annoying situation. When I began to observe my thoughts, I discovered that, as I stood in line, I kept telling myself, "I always have to wait." Then I realized that those affirmations made over and over again had created what I did not want to experience. I consciously changed that affirmation to, "No matter when I stand in the market, I never have to wait." Sure enough, that new affirmation worked just as well as the old negative one. As you begin to observe your thoughts, don't be discouraged if you find that your internal conversations don't match how you would feel if you had achieved your goal. You must first become aware of what you are doing with your creative power before you can begin to change it. I ask you to go down to the potter's house and see what he is doing. If the pot is broken, transform it back into the kind of pot that pleases you. When you begin to observe your thoughts, you cannot help but realize that you alone are the cause of everything that comes into your world. Only you can change it. Appearances. What you encounter in your world now is the result of your past thoughts, beliefs, feelings, and imaginal activity. These appearances will continue to exist as long as you give them life through your consciousness. You must ignore the evidence of your senses regarding any undesirable conditions in your life. You must imagine and feel that you have already attained that which you want to experience, rather than that which you do not want to continue to exist. This may seem difficult, yet you have probably exercised this principle unconsciously to produce negative results. When I was in my early 20s, I found myself in a situation that I found very unpleasant and wanted to get out of it. After attending a lecture by Neville, I waited to talk to him afterwards. I briefly told him about my unhappy circumstances and hoped he would offer some advice on how to change them. He smiled at me and said, "Don't take it." At that point in my life, I didn't fully understand what Neville had been teaching. I thought he had misunderstood my question, and I tried to clarify my problem by saying that I had already made the choice to be in the situation I now found so unpleasant. Neville smiled again and said, "Don't accept it." I left his presence rather frustrated, thinking that he had not understood my problem. I continued reading the 2 books I had by Neville. I gradually came to understand that, whatever my circumstances, I didn't have to accept them as final. I began to imagine what I wanted, instead of focusing my thoughts on my negative surroundings. 2 weeks after I began my imaginary acts, an event occurred that was decisive for my heart's desire to be fulfilled 5 months later: a new house. In the meantime, the situation that had been so depressing to me improved, and I spent the next 5 months planning what I would do in my new home. Think of a disappointment you've had in the past. Perhaps you were looking forward to attending a special event with someone. In anticipating it, did you think, "This is too good to be true. Something will probably happen to spoil it"? Something probably happened that created a conflict or caused you to miss it altogether. It is relatively easy for human beings to look down on the promise of something good by thinking of all the reasons why they can't get it. People around you may be quick to point out that you are unrealistic when you mention a desire that seems difficult or impossible to achieve. We must all be unrealistic in the face of the army of doubt if we want to see our desire fulfilled. We are called to disregard the facts that would deny the attainment of our heart's desire. Habit is the only thing that keeps our thoughts moving along the old, familiar, negative grooves. No one but you can change your thought patterns and therefore your life. It is worth all the effort it may take to focus your attention and feel as if you already possess what you desire instead of things as they are. Consciousness is the only cause and the only reality. Every negative experience was produced by first giving attention and feeling to that condition. What consciousness has done, it can undo. Your responsibility is to imprint in your mind the change you wish to express. Your imagination is the creative power that can and will accomplish the end effortlessly and naturally. Appearances confirm our old habitual patterns of thinking. What you imagine yourself to be today will be projected into your world tomorrow. Persistence in assuming that you are the person you wish to be, despite your present circumstances, is the only condition imposed on you to embody that ideal. Inner conversations. We are all mentally talking within ourselves every waking moment. Our inner conversations must coincide with the desire fulfilled if we are to make our wish come true. If our desire is for a better job, and we imagine that we are congratulated because we are gainfully employed in a wonderful position, we must also match our inner conversations to that end. We must be sure that we are not saying inside ourselves something like, "That boss of mine doesn't believe in promoting people," or "It would be hard to find any job at my age, let alone a better one," or similar statements that would imply that we don't have what we desire. We must persist in the feeling of our imaginal act by making our mental conversations conform to what we would say if we had already realized our goal. If, for example, we desired to have a new car, we might imagine a new car parked in our garage, or imagine ourselves driving it, or imagine our friends admiring it. Next, we should make our inner conversations reflect the kind of conversations we would have if we actually owned a new car. Our conversations could consist of talking about our new car with friends, for example, telling them about the wonderful mileage we are getting, or listening to our friends tell us how much they enjoy driving our new car, etc. Our internal conversations are as creative as our deliberate imagination of the wish fulfilled. In fact, if they are of the opposite nature, they may negate what we have imagined. You must watch what you say internally to make sure that these conversations match your fulfilled desire. If you find that these internal conversations contradict what you would like to achieve, revise them so that they follow the path that would indicate that you already have what you desire or that you are already the person you wish to be. Review. Our current world reflects the sum total of everything you believe to be true about yourself and others. What you imagine yourself to be today goes on and will confront you in the future. If you have forgotten your imagined activities of the past, what you see appearing in your world indicates the kind of seeds you have previously sown. To assume the feeling of your desire fulfilled is to use your imagination creatively to bring into your world that which you wish to experience. You can use the art of revision to change the effects of previous thoughts and beliefs. If, for example, you went to an interview for a job you really wanted, but later found out that someone else had been hired, you can revise that news to match what you wish you had heard. If you react by becoming depressed or taking on any other negative attitude, you will experience the same type of rejection in the future. Your reactions, positive or negative, are creators of future circumstances. In your imagination, you may hear words congratulating yourself on getting a wonderful new job. That imaginal act now goes forward, and you will encounter this pleasant experience in the future. When you review your day, it is important to review each negative reaction so that you can remember it as what you wish had happened, rather than storing that memory as it occurred. What you think with feeling or emotion is a real fact. What you experience in the physical world is but a shadow reflecting the reality of your imaginal activity. Therefore, when you review a conversation, an unhappy experience, or a quality about yourself, you are literally experiencing it in reality, your consciousness. The outer world is a delayed reflection of the inner world and is confined to a dimension of space where events occur in a temporal sequence. The review, therefore, literally changes the past. It replaces what happened in the outside world with the revised version. The revised scene then emits its effect by going on to change future events. Dwelling on past irritations or wounds perpetuates them and creates a vicious cycle that serves to confirm those negative emotions. The cycle can be broken by starting now to review anything you no longer wish to keep in your world. By reviewing the past, you free yourself from any effect it may have on your future. The review is actually the key that can be used to unlock the doors that have kept you stuck in a particular state. Transform yourselves by renewing your mind. States of consciousness. All states exist and are a fixed part of creation. Anyone can enter a state consciously or fall into a state inadvertently. You can move into different states throughout your life, or you can occupy a single state. Desire is what usually motivates us to move from one state to a higher state. Since a state is total and complete in itself, when we enter a state, we are compelled to behave in a manner dictated by that state. For example, in the state of poverty, we would find ourselves constantly in need of funds. We would have difficulty making ends meet and would not be able to enjoy luxuries. If we were given a large sum of money, if we remained in the state of poverty, filling our mind with thoughts of lack and limitation, we would soon find ourselves without funds and experiencing the same difficulties again. The opposite would occur if we were to occupy a state of wealth. When we are in a state, we only see the content of that state and are compelled to act in accordance with all that the state entails. While you are in a certain state, you believe certain things to be true, and it would be difficult for you to understand another point of view. In the state of poverty, it is easy to focus your thoughts on the problems of providing food, shelter, and clothing. When you manage to get out of this state, you no longer find it difficult to acquire these things. Most people attribute this change in fortune to a change in circumstances. However, unless you have moved out of a state of poverty, no change of circumstances would be permanent. Rather, moving out of one state and into another in your imagination automatically creates a change in your outer world. The Bible has personified each type of state and calls these states by names familiar to us, such as Moses, Noah, Job, Peter, Andrew, and Jesus. Throughout our journey, we enter these states and experience all that they offer us. The last state we will enter is the state of Jesus Christ. In this state, we become aware that we are God, the Father, and that we have a Son symbolized as David, who embodies the sum total of all humanity. The journey begins with Adam, who fell asleep and dreamed the dream of life, and then entered the innumerable states to acquire the necessary experiences before awakening. When he enters the state of Jesus, he knows himself to be God, and his journey into this world of death is then complete, the play. As Shakespeare said, "All the world is a stage, and all men and women are mere actors. They have their exits and their entrances, and every man in his time plays many parts." This world, which seems so real, is as much a dream as the dreams we have while we sleep. Our waking dream seems so real because it has continuity, while our nighttime dreams seem like random sequences, taking place in unfamiliar surroundings and situations. God is the dreamer, the one who brings the play to life, and God plays all the roles. Everyone who appears in your world is God playing that role for you, the author. No one comes to me unless I call him. Each of us writes our own script. If you are not satisfied with the play, it is up to you to rewrite the script to fit your idea of what the play should be. You cannot require the actors to change the character they portray. All changes must occur in the author's mind. If there is someone in your world that you find annoying or irritating, that person has no choice but to play the role that is asked of them in the script. There is nothing you can do from the outside to bring about change in another person. You can use the art of revision to change a line of dialogue, substitute one character for another, and write happy endings for subplots in the play. When you begin to look objectively at this waking dream, you can see that you have been the author of both the pleasant and unhappy acts in your play. You can radically change the play by using your imagination creatively, assuming your wish fulfilled. You can change the script daily by revising the scene you did not like. The character that bothered you today will not bother you tomorrow if you write the dialogue you wish to hear and modify that role in your imagination. When you wake up to know that you are God, Father, and author of this magnificent play, you will understand that every man in his time plays many roles. Your real purpose. God became you so completely that he forgot that he was God. In becoming man, God reached the limit of contraction and opacity. God totally forgets that he is God in order to become and animate his creation, man. God then goes through all the experiences of knowing good and evil and even death, in the confidence that man will eventually awaken from this dream of life to know again that he is God. There is only God in the universe, fragmenting as humanity, and God plays all the roles in this time-space dream. Your own wondrous human imagination is God in action. I am is Christ in you, your Savior, and Christ is the power of God and the wisdom of God. God speaks to us through desire, urging us to reach higher and higher levels of consciousness. By exercising his own wonderful human imagination to achieve these desires, man is actually experiencing God in action. Through faith in his imagination, man will eventually conclude that Christ, the power and wisdom of God, is within him as his imagination. At the end of this fabulous journey or dream of life, man will awaken to remember that he is God, the Father, enhanced by the experiences he put himself through when he forgot he was God. Man's sole purpose is to experience Scripture, all states of consciousness personified as men in the Bible. Man's goal is to reach the state called Jesus Christ. Then he will know that he is really the Father, Jesus, and that his Son is Christ, all mankind merged into one being. Man may have many goals in the meantime, to accumulate possessions, become powerful, become famous, or express whatever he desires. Eventually, the hunger to know God will come upon him, and then he will have the experiences that are necessary to bring to his memory that he truly is God, the Father. Case histories. This story concerns a woman, whom we will refer to as Mrs. A.B. She knew that imagination creates reality, and had taught this principle to her 3 children, ages 12, 10, and 6. She had practiced this principle for years to obtain the things she desired. Although her husband had also heard this teaching, he had not put it into practice and, in fact, was quite skeptical of the results. One Sunday afternoon, this family was out for a walk and came across a new area of houses for sale. Since it was a nice rural area, they stopped to look at the new models. They all loved the area, and the homes were big and beautiful, with all kinds of modern conveniences. On the way home, they talked about how wonderful it would be to have a new home in this area. They already owned a house, but had taken out a loan and had very little equity they could get from selling it. The husband said that, although he would like to buy the house, it was not possible, as they could not raise the money needed for the down payment. Even if they sold their current house, the realtor's commission would be equal to the little equity they would get. Mrs. A.B. told her husband that the only way to get the down payment would be to sell the house on her own, and thus keep the commission. The husband was very pessimistic about this, but told his wife to go ahead and put an ad in the newspaper, even though he knew it wouldn't do any good. He was sure there was no chance of selling the house this way. The wife placed a small ad in the newspaper advertising her house for sale. A few nights later, when the husband had gone to bed early, she and her children drove to the area of new houses. She thought that if she could walk through the new house and get the feeling of actually living there, she would get her dream house. It was dark when they arrived, but they found one of the houses open. She and the 3 children toured the house. The children decided which room each would occupy if they actually lived there. The mother asked the children to sleep in the new house of their imagination that night, and she planned to do the same. For the next few days, they imagined themselves living in their new house and taking walks in the adjacent forest. Later that week, a man answered the newspaper ad. He didn't seem very enthusiastic about buying the house, but returned later that day with his wife. He told Mrs. A.B. that they had decided to buy the house for the price she was asking. When Mrs. A.B. expressed concern about how they were going to deposit the house, he told her that he was a real estate agent and that he would do it through the company he worked for. This family received the exact amount of money needed for the down payment on their new home. The escrow was very short, and the family moved into their new home a month later. Mrs. A.B. knew that if she imagined sleeping in her new house, she would end up sleeping there in the flesh. Her children also learned to get their heart's desires through the use of imagination. Mrs. C.D. was recently divorced and needed to work to support her children, as her husband refused to pay child support. Although her lawyer suggested that she take him to court for non-payment, she declined to do so. As part of the divorce settlement, she was given a very old and unreliable car. On his way home from work one Friday night, it was raining heavily, and most of the intersections were flooded. She was about a mile from home when she stopped at a stop sign. A truck coming toward her from the opposite direction came through the intersection, spraying a large amount of water as it passed. The woman's car engine stalled, and she was unable to restart it. She took off her shoes before getting out of the car, as the water was up to her ankles. She lifted the hood and began wiping the distributor cap with the handkerchief. He was crying, and his tears mixed with the rain. She finally managed to start the car and get home to her children. She realized that she needed a reliable car if she wanted to work and support her children. She had no money for a down payment on a new car and did not earn enough to meet the car payments. The following Monday, she went to work, and a co-worker invited her to lunch. The co-worker had just bought a new Pontiac Tempest and insisted that Mrs. C.D. drive her new car to the office. Although Mrs. C.D. protested that she did not want to drive someone's new car, she got behind the wheel and drove back to work. As she drove the new car, she got the feeling that it was hers and felt the thrill of owning it. For the rest of the week, as she drove to and from work in her old car, Mrs. C.D. imagined she was driving her own new car. The following Friday, Mrs. C.D.'s ex-husband called her and asked her if she would like a new car. It was the first time since their divorce several months earlier that he had offered to do anything for her, including paying alimony. The ex-husband worked at a new car dealership and told her that as a salesman he could buy a car of a particular make with no down payment and very low monthly payments. He told her that he was willing to pay the monthly payments in lieu of alimony and asked her to go to the dealership to choose the color she wanted. It just so happened that the make of the car that was eligible for this special offer was a Pontiac Tempest, the same make and model as the car she had driven and which belonged to her co-worker. Mrs. C.D. was able to obtain, through the use of imagination, what she would never have been able to obtain by her own means at the time. Her ex-husband, who had not offered her any financial assistance for months, was the chosen avenue to provide her with the car she needed. This is the story of Mrs. E.F., who wanted to live near the ocean and used her imagination to fulfill her wish. She did not want to sell her current house, but rather rent it for a year before making the decision to move to the beach for good. Mrs. E.F. told her wish to 2 friends. One friend, who had used the imagination principle, told Mrs. E.F. that she would imagine visiting her at the beach in her new house. A week later, Mrs. E.F. traveled to Hawaii for a scheduled vacation. There she received a call from a friend who lived in San Diego. This friend told Mrs. E.F. that a cottage had just come on the market that was perfect for year-round rentals and that she thought it would be perfect for her. Her friend also told her that it was a very attractive rental and that Mrs. EF would have to make a decision immediately, as it was very likely that the rental would not be available when she returned from Hawaii. Mrs. EF told her friend to tell the landlords that she would keep it, relying on her friend's recommendation. When Mrs. EF returned from Hawaii, she told her oldest daughter that she had decided to rent a house on the beach in San Diego. Her daughter called her later that day and told her that the mother of a friend of hers wanted to rent a house. The woman showed up the next day, said she loved the house and would like to rent it for a year. Mrs. EF gave notice at work and was able to move in within a month. Since she was a nurse, she had no trouble finding a new job at a nearby hospital. Since then, Mrs. EF has bought a house near the sea and has spent 17 happy years living on the beach. Mrs. EF imagined living on the beach, and her friend imagined visiting her there. They did this for a week. Interestingly, while she was on vacation in Hawaii, events rushed in to make her wish come true. She did nothing to find a new house or rent the one she had. Imagination was able to draw into her life the people necessary to make her wish come true. What is there to do after we have imagined our wish coming true? Nothing. You think you can do something, you want to do something, but in reality you can't do anything to get it. God, our wonderful human imagination, knows what things are necessary to realize our desires. It is only necessary to go to the end, to live in the end. My ways are unsearchable. My ways are higher than your ways. If we trust our imagination, it will perform all that we ask of it. Imagination can do all things. Have faith in it, and nothing will be impossible for you. This story is about a young man named EP who was a wonderful athlete and was good at many different sports. At that time in his life, he became interested in canoe paddling. He joined a team and soon began competing in local races. In his second year of paddling, he was part of a team that competed in the 80-kilometer race between Molokai and Honolulu. Hawaiian outrigger teams usually came in first and were considered unbeatable. EP's team came in 7th place, and that was considered quite remarkable considering the large number of teams competing from around the world along with the Hawaiian participants. After this race, EP began to imagine that his team had won the race. He spent the next year forming a new team, practicing and building his own outrigger canoe. He was convinced that if he imagined himself winning the race, his team would come in first. The following year, his team and at least a dozen others flew to Hawaii from Southern California to compete in the annual regatta. There were several teams with much more experience that were considered likely to place in the top 10, although the Hawaiians were still considered the favorites. At the end of the race, the EP team finished first, ahead of the Hawaiians and all the other teams. EP now has a paddle engraved with the words World Champion, which was presented to him when his team took first place. After winning this coveted title, this young man went on to coach other teams. He also started making canoe paddles. His paddles are known around the world and are used by canoe paddling teams that are among the best in the world. EP now lives in Hawaii and enjoys coaching teams, making paddles, fishing and sailing his own boat. He also uses his boat as an escort boat in the annual outrigger regattas. Mrs. J.K. lived at her twin sister's house after she was divorced. Mrs. J.K. had 3 children, 1 boy and 2 twin girls. Her sister and her husband had 3 boys. Needless to say, the home was crowded. Mrs. J.K. wanted to get married and live in her own home. She had been dating a man, but decided she did not wish to continue the relationship and broke it off. Many of her friends tried to match Mrs. J.K. with eligible men they knew, but she was not interested in blind dating. Several of her friends commented that if she wanted to meet an attractive man, she would have to leave the house. The twins believed in the creative power of imagination and had a friend who also knew the power of imagination. The 3 women decided that they would imagine a ring on Mrs. J.K.'s finger, implying that she was married. They did this for several weeks. During that time, Mrs. J.K. also imagined herself living in her own home. However, when she tried, she imagined a house exactly like her sister's. One day, Mrs. J.K. received a call from a friend who asked her to come over to her house to help her wallpaper the kitchen. Mrs. J.K. agreed to help her friend, who lived a few blocks away in the same area of houses. While she was there, a neighbor came to visit her friend. The friend introduced Mrs. J.K. to her neighbor. The neighbor called Mrs. J.K. and they began dating. 5 months later, Mrs. J.K. married this man. The interesting thing about this story is that all of these people lived in the same housing development. There were only 4 houses in the 1200 tract that had the same floor plan. Yes, this woman's husband owned one of the houses that had the same floor plan as Mrs. J.K.'s twin sister. Although Mrs. J.K. imagined herself living in her own house, she had only been able to imagine living in a house identical to her sister's house. This is a story about the friend, Mrs. L.M., who had introduced Mrs. J.K. to her new husband. During their friendship, Mrs. J.K. had tried to explain the principle of imagination to her friend, who was very doubtful that it would work. One day, Mrs. J.K. asked her friend to attend one of Neville's lectures. Mrs. L.M. agreed to attend, but she was not very convinced that imagining she had what she wanted would get it. But she decided to imagine a very simple thing, the receipt of a handkerchief. She imagined that someone had given it to her and gave up the idea. To her surprise, she received a handkerchief in the mail from the mother of a friend who came to eat at her house while she was in town visiting. This woman sent Mrs. L.M. a handkerchief with a thank you note. Mrs. L.M. was not only surprised to receive the gift, she was very frightened as she thought there was something supernatural about it. Mrs. L.M. had tried to disprove that imagination produces the desired thing. When she received the handkerchief she had imagined, she interpreted it as a kind of black magic and wanted nothing more to do with this teaching. I could relate hundreds of incidents involving dozens of people in which imagination was used to obtain the desired results. I have chosen just a few stories to illustrate that imagination can be used to solve all kinds of problems and make all your heart's desires come true. If you would like to purchase this or any other of our books, either in print or electronic format, please see the video description. Thank you for listening.